You know the Kubler-Ross model of the 5 stages of grief? Come on, everybody knows it. While people who are diagnosed with obstructive sleep apnea and prescribed CPAP go through something sort of similar. It's not grief per se, but you've got denial, anger, depression, acceptance, and holy crap, am I going to die in a power outage? And what do I do if I want to go camping? Anyway, that's what we're going to be talking about this week. How to power your CPAP when you're off the grid, either willingly or unwillingly. So, yeah, come on. So, as with most things related to sleep apnea, there is no one-size-fits-all solution. There are a number of different ways you can power your CPAP when you don't have access to the grid. And which one is right for you is the one that's right for you. So, as with most of my videos here, I'm not trying to say, this is a solution that works, do this. What I'm trying to do is say, here are your options, and here's what works for me. So anyway, the simplest solution for powering your CPAP when your power is out or when you're off the grid is a recommendation given in ResMed's battery guide. And it's just a deep cycle battery with an adapter and then a DC power cable or converter in the case of ResMed. It's probably the most economical solution. There are pros and cons. It really kind of means that you're limited in how you can use the battery and you do have to charge it regularly. But it's simple. It's not that expensive. So yeah, that's one option. Another option for people who aren't going to go camping and just want to know during a power outage their CPAP's going to keep working is kind of a UPS, an uninterrupted power supply. But of course, given that this is CPAP and anything CPAP related is more expensive, this is not going to be like going down to Best Buy to buy an APC. For one thing, those don't really provide enough power to run your CPAP all night. And for another thing, way more outlets that you need. So one popular option is what's called the portable outlet. It's a 157 watt device. You plug it into the wall. You plug your CPAP into the outlet on it, and what it does is provides pass-through power. So on any normal night, you're just drawing power from the grid. But then if the power goes out, the battery kicks in, and if you're not using humidity, it'll keep you going all night. If you are using humidity, it'll provide you somewhere between 3 and 6 hours of usage. So if your power outages are pretty sporadic and you can't really plan for them, and you know you're never going to go camping or what have you, that's a pretty good option. The portable outlet is, I think, somewhere around $360. It's actually one of the cheapest battery backup solutions for CPAP. They get way more expensive from there. And with more expense comes more features, more battery backup time. Anyway, look into those if you want. Another really popular option are power stations. So these are devices that have all sorts of outputs. They've got a DC battery with some amount of power. They usually have an inverter built into them. Yeah, they can be charged with solar. They can be charged with grid power. Pretty good option overall. There are a lot of them, and they range anywhere from, little units with 250 watt hours of power all the way up to 1,000 watt hours of power. Which one do I use? Join me in the kitchen, we'll look at it. This is the DBPOWER 250 watt portable power station. And this is what I use to power my CPAP during power outages. So why did I go this route instead of just using a deep cycle battery? Well, at the time I didn't know any better. I was just trying to come up with a solution that worked for me. Also, at the time that I purchased this, I was using a DreamStation CPAP instead of the AirSense 10. And truth be told, this works really great with the DreamStation. All you really need is this DC to DC cable. Plug it in like this. Plug this into the DreamStation. And this will work with the DreamStation 2 as well. Although you might have to put it on the edge of your counter or whatever, because the DreamStation 2 actually has a 90-degree bend at the end. But it works great. So this thing has 250 watt hours of power in it, which means that it can run a 250 watt device for an hour, a 50 watt device for 5 hours, and so forth. The great thing about it, and the thing that made it a great choice for me, is it's really dirt cheap. I paid $118 for this, which is a really good deal. If you look at Amazon, they often have coupons that will drop the price significantly. The coupons range anywhere from $15 to $35. But what I've found is that the price of the device goes up with the value of the coupon. So you're always going to pay about the same, about 120 bucks. What are the features that I like about it? Well, you can see here that it's got these lights here and here that can be controlled like that. And they have several different functions, a flash, an SOS, and you can double tap this button to turn these lights on the front on. Mostly useful just for seeing these connections in the dark. So it has quite a number of DC connections. It's got a USB Smart and two USB ports, one of them 5 volt 2 amp, the other one 5 volt 1 amp. It's got a USB-C in for charging, but not out. It's got DC power in, and you can use that with a wall plug, an included wall plug, or with a solar charger, and it's got the DC out. It's also got this funky AC out. Now, the reason it looks like this is because it's universal. It'll work with European plugs, it'll work with all sorts of plugs, but you can see a standard 3-prong US plug will fit in just fine. And you don't need to use every hole. There is a bit of controversy when it comes to the AC outlet, though. In the marketing materials for this device, DBPOWER claims that it is a pure sine wave. Although if you look closer in the images for the device, it says it is a modified sine wave. Why does that matter? Well, to understand that, we need to get a little bit geeky about electricity. The electricity that comes out of your wall, the ports that look like this, is what's called alternating current. In other words, it's not just a direct flow of electrons or electron charge in one direction. It alternates polarity toward the positive and then toward the negative. And it forms a sine wave if you look at it through an oscilloscope. So it starts at 0, goes up to the maximum positive charge, down to 0, down to the maximum negative charge, then back to 0, and that's what's called one cycle. But this is a DC device. It is a battery. So this actually is what's called an inverter. It has to convert direct current from the battery to alternating current to run devices plugged into it. Now, there are 3 main ways to do that. One, the simplest, is just to take and go from sort of 0 to maximum positive, then back to 0, then maximum negative, and it forms what's called a square wave. A modified sine wave is where it steps up in discrete chunks. So it doesn't form a smooth sine wave like the electricity from your wall would, or like a sine wave inverter would, but it's sort of a chunky, blocky sine wave. At any rate, you would not want to run sensitive electronic devices with a modified sine wave. You would want a pure sine wave. And I'm sorry, but $120 battery, I don't care what they claim, is not going to provide a pure sine wave. Here's the thing though, you really don't want to be running your CPAP off of this anyway. Why? Well, to make all of those conversions takes energy. Where does that energy come from? It comes from the battery. So although this device claims to have 67,200 milliamp hours or 67.2 amp hours, you're not going to get that out of this, okay? Because it has to convert that DC to AC. And then if you're using a CPAP, which are all DC devices, your power brick has to convert that AC back to DC. So that's why running a CPAP off an inverter is a really bad idea. You want to run it off of DC. So as I said, with the DreamStation, super simple, one cable solution, right? And that is because the DreamStation is a 12 volt device, and this is a 12 volt battery. The ResMed machines, by contrast, are 24 volt devices. So if you look at the DC power adapter for a ResMed machine, this is it. And you can see it's got a DC converter here, which takes 12 volt DC and converts it into 24 volt DC. The power end is a cigarette car lighter adapter. And then you've got the plug that you plug into your AirSense. This is for the AirSense 10 specifically. You'll notice something though, while a lot of the more expensive power packs have a cigarette lighter adapter in them, this one doesn't. So if you have a Jackery or something like that, you can just plug this straight in and plug this into your machine and you'd be good. But what you need to make it work with this device is a cigarette lighter adapter, which has got a DC plug on one end, cigarette lighter on the other. Now, they make these that have USB on this end. So you'd think, oh, just plug into the USB port and it'd be fine. No, most of those are rated for very low power, very low amperage. And for a device that uses as much power as the DreamStation does, you want a solution like this. By the way, I will put links to all of these products in the comment section below, and there'll be Amazon affiliate links if you want to buy them. As an Amazon associate, I may earn a little bit on all qualified purchases. And it's an easy way for you to help me out. It doesn't cost you any extra. But anyway, so this is how I power my AirSense 10 now. I plug this cable into here, plug this in like that, plug this into my AirSense 10. Turn on the power, turn on DC USB, and you're good to go. So, let's talk about the things I like about this unit. Super small, super light. You literally hold it in one hand. It weighs, I don't know, a few pounds, 4 pounds, something like that. I like the option of having the USB outputs. I actually use this power pack every time I'm shooting my videos against a green screen. I use these to power my lights for the green screen. I like that it's simple. I like the fact that it's got a cooling fan should it overheat. I think it's a little noisy, but not too much. I mean, it's certainly not as loud as like a ceiling fan or something like that. I like the fact that it has USB-C charging. I don't like the fact that it doesn't have a USB-C output. Things that I don't like. Well, I don't like that this is a modified sine wave inverter. Although, again, I'm not going to use this for my CPAP, but there are times I might want to plug devices into it that require AC power. And I don't like modified sine wave. Not good for sensitive electronics. I don't like the fact that it charges so slow. So the DC in is limited to 15 volts, 2 amps. So what that means is you're going to recharge this at a rate of about 30 watts per hour. If you plug it into the wall, this is a 250 watt hour device. So you can do the math. In my testing, it takes about 8.5 hours to charge it. The USB-C in, on the other hand, is, what is it? I think it's a 5 volt, 3 amp. So it's going to charge at about half the speed. That's kind of unacceptable. A lot of solar panels have USB-C outputs. Well, if you use that with this, assuming you're getting maximum power, yeah, you're only going to charge this thing at a rate of about 15 watts per hour, which means it's going to take you, what, 17 hours to charge it if you use the USB-C. Not a big fan of that. But in every other respect, I really like this thing. So, this is about 120 bucks. The DC to cigarette lighter adapter was about $6. And I'm using an off-brand KFD DC to DC adapter for my AirSense 10. I want to say this is 35 bucks. Again, I'll put affiliate links in the description box below, but 35 bucks, $6. Let's just call it $40, 120. So 160 bucks for a complete solution that will run my AirSense 10 during a power outage. It's pretty cool. There are solutions that do a much better job. There are solutions that have much more power reserves. But guess what? They're all much more expensive. So I'm going to dig into this later in the video and sort of the geeky portion of this video that you guys can skip if you want to, but spoiler warning, I've discovered that this thing can run my AirSense 10 with a humidifier level of 6 and pressure range of 12.6 to 14.2 for an entire night and still have over 30% battery power left. That's pretty good. If I turn the humidifier off entirely, I could get nearly 5 nights out of this thing. That's pretty great. Again, I'll dig into the details later in the video. There's going to be some math. You can skip that if you want. But that's the TLDR. For 160 bucks, you can have a solution that will keep you running with humidity and pretty high pressures for a night. You turn off your humidifier, which uses a lot of power, and you don't use a heated hose, which again uses a lot of power. You get 4 nights at least off of this thing. By the way, it's interesting to sort of discuss, why does the humidifier use so much power? Well, if you think about it, a heater is just a really, really inefficient electrical device. So when we talk about electrical efficiency, we're talking about how much of the energy pumped into a device goes into doing work and how much is lost to heat. So the heating plate in the bottom of your humidifier is basically just designed to be really, really inefficient. Most of the electricity that goes into it is designed to be lost as heat, so it warms up your water. So anyway, that's why it's such a stark difference. That's why one night with a humidifier level of 6 or 4, I found out it doesn't really matter, 4 or 6, it's going to use about the same. One night, turn them all off, 4.8 nights. So yeah, your humidifier makes a big difference. If you're going camping and you can live with that humidity for a few days, just charge this thing before you go, 4 nights out of it. Or you can add a solar charger, charge it during the day. Yeah, good solution, cheap solution. I dig it. So again, I want to reiterate, this is just what works for me and my financial situation and my needs. Look around, see what works best for you. So the rest of the video, a lot of you I'm probably going to lose. So I just want to go ahead and say thank you for joining me this week, and I'll see you guys in 2 weeks. I'm going to be on vacation next week. So what follows is going to be my first test with this battery solution with my AirSense 10 all night. And then we're going to get geeky. I'm going to dig through ResMed's battery guide. I'm going to do some math to break down what amount of power I need for my specific setup with humidity, without humidity, how many nights that gives me. Also, I'm going to see how much actual battery power I used from this battery, because one of the things I forgot to mention about it that I don't like is that it doesn't give you a precise measure of how much power is left. There's just 4 LEDs. You've got 25%, 50%, 75%, or 100%. Not really helpful. So I'm going to do some math, figure out how much battery I actually used. And yeah, if you want to stick around, stick around. If not, I'll see you next time.
Okay, it's 10:12 p.m. and I'm about to try my first night with the battery-powered ResMed AirSense 10. Turn on power. Turn on DC power. That's a good sign. You know what, just for fun, I'm going to leave the humidifier level at 6. yeah, let's see how this goes. Well, it's about 10 till 6 in the morning. Got a full night's sleep off of it. But the battery is down 25% or below. I definitely think I need to turn the humidity down to 4 just to be extra sure. But other than that, I got a full night's sleep. It worked great. And yeah, I'd say this was a success. It's later in the day, and I want to check my Oscar data for last night. I'm checking for a few things. I've already imported my sleep data from my SD card and my oximetry from my O2 ring. That's not really important. A couple of key things I want to look for is number one, well, did I have a good night of sleep? Did I have a good night of therapy? And looking at this, I did. My AHI never got above 3. And for the entire night, it's less than 1. That's really great. So there weren't any performance issues with running the AirSense 10 on a battery. Here's the thing I really want to look for, though. What was my average pressure? And that is over here. Unfortunately, it is giving me a median pressure. What I really need is a mean pressure. There are 3 types of averages: mean, median, and mode. Median is just sort of the halfway point between your highest pressure and your lowest pressure. The mean would be an average pressure over time. So I'd really love to see that, but that would require a lot of math, and Oscar apparently does not give that to you. So, I'm going to guess it's somewhere around 13.5 would be my mean. And why is that important? Well, I want to look at ResMed's battery guide and kind of see how much power I should be drawing with DC. By the way, a couple of really important things to read in this battery guide, and I will link it in the description below. But one of the key things is they highly recommend not using an inverter for the AirSense 10. Yeah, if you look down here at the converter battery tables, and that's running off of DC instead of plugging in power, you've got the AirMini, the Stellar, the AirSense 10, the S9. But if you look at the inverter battery tables, the only machines that they certify to run off an inverter are S9 series, VPAP 3, Stellar, and AutoSet CS2 and VPAP Adapt. So yeah, you shouldn't be running an AirSense 10 off an inverter, but you really wouldn't be able to get enough usage out of it anyway for it to matter. So anyway, what am I looking at here? Converter battery tables. I'm looking for AirSense 10. That's going to be right here in this column. And then one thing you can really see here is that, this is your pressure. This is the battery size that you need. We'll really ignore the current draw because that's not a factor. But if I were not using any humidifier at all, well, I'm somewhere between the 12 and 16. So I would need somewhere between 13 and 15 amp hours to power it. But of course, I used a humidifier level of 6, which complicates things a little bit because we're going to have to do 2 averages here. I'm between 4 and 8, so, and I'm also in pressure sort of between 12 and 16. Let's just call it 14, which would be toward the upper end of my pressure range, but still that's fine. So yeah, with the humidifier set at 4, I would need somewhere between 32 and 40 amp hours. So let's just say 36. With humidifier level at 8, I would need somewhere between 49 and 51. So let's say 50. So 36 plus 50 divided by 2. I need about 43 amp hours. Now, supposedly, this battery the DBPOWER battery has 67 amp hours available to it. So 43 divided by 67 equals 64. So I apparently used about 64% of the battery. Well, what that means, I guess, is the LED lights are showing you not how much power you have or less, but how much power you have or more. So one dot means you've got at least 25%, but less than 50%. Two dots would mean at least 50, but less than 75. So yeah, all of this checks out. I used about 64% of my power, meaning that I had about 36% left, which means I would not get another night on it. So what would happen if I turned my humidifier completely off? I would use somewhere around 14 amp hours. So 67 divided by 14 equals, I would get more than 4 nights out of it. I mean, I guess that would be acceptable in an emergency, but I need my humidity, and I don't have access to heat and moisture exchangers, although I guess I could buy some. But really, ultimately, I'm going to use humidity, and this shows I might as well just go ahead and use it at 6, because even if I drop it to 4, I'm not going to get more than a night out of it. So yeah, given that I can charge my battery with solar power the next day if need be, I'm happy with this as a solution. It works for me. It may not work for you, but it works for me.